Homelessness and pain don't have no gender or any neutral ground. It's just like society today. Everybody believes in God, but they want to believe in a religion when it's all about spirituality. Religion divides. Spirituality that's a unity, and that's what we need to gain as a society. We got to gain a neutral ground because whatever it may be, we have to find what's killing everybody out here. Why they ain't changing? I'm the grimiest of the grimiest. I just got out of jail, so I speak, and it ain't bullshit. I really am staying clean. I tell everybody I got high with. If I try to get high, you have every right to beat my ass. You know, and until we find a neutral ground to reach out to everybody else, we cannot accomplish what we're out here to fulfill. This is all a waste. Until then, we have to find that. You got to find the medium between that. Who's the person to speak for them? You got advocates. I'm a person to speak to them. I'm a prodigy of the Guardian Project, whatever that may be. There's this movement called the Guardian Project, and it's all for a pure society. And for a long time, I went around thinking that everybody was a bad guy, because I thought that everybody was following me and shit like that, but I was just running into them because they're stationed around, because that's a community. I know that in towns, the families that may be, the powers that may be, they run that shit. That is their town. So you cannot go into any place disrespecting. So I'm all for the betterment of community or any society because it needs to be changed. You got to find a medium between that. It can't be money because with money they do wrong. It can't be betterment because they don't want to better themselves. It can't be tough love because they don't want to taste that shit. We've been tasting it. So the answer is, once you find that medium, then you find an advocate for that. And then, then you'll start to barely figure out the problem. Thank you. My name is Val.
We have some surveys that we're going to go over here, and we want you guys to get familiar with them, so you can go out, and we talked about this yesterday. So we can then go out and ask people to answer these questions. We can collect the data, and this is data that we can use to help strengthen our legal position and better understand what people's needs are. Okay? So I'll give you a little time to kind of look it over.
Yeah, but number 2, all right. I just live here.
Okay.
Well, so that can be an other. What we want to do, and that's why I put other in a couple of places, and we'll go over that in just a moment. We'll give folks a chance to kind of look it over.
What brought you to Gilroy, or how did you become a resident here?
Yeah,
but
so
you can put a number of years, how long you've been here, years and months too.
Yeah, if you were born here. Right now we're looking at it. We're gonna send you guys out. You're our disciples. You're gonna go out and have people answer these questions. Okay, so you'll have more of these. And then you can ask the people the question and mark it off. It's better if you do that rather than them,
right?
Because sometimes their handwriting is not going to be legible. Right?
Like false.
And if you know what we're doing, you're going to be a lot more careful with that.
I would like to go over the philosophy behind why these questions and some basic things. So one, whether you would fill this out, if you are an unhoused resident of Gilroy, then yes. But we'd want to make sure that as many people fill it out, but only one time.
Right.
We do not need identifying information from folks, so people don't need to put down their phone numbers or contact info, nothing that identifies them. We just need answers to questions. And what we're going with, and I'll kind of walk through each set of questions so that we have a sense of what the data point is that we're trying to elicit.
Right.
But the goal is, of course, to write down extra things that people are saying. If there's like, hey, this doesn't really capture it, even where there's, like if there's some place where there's not another, that's helpful. But what's especially helpful is to be able to say, this many people filled it out, and this is the percentage. So you need some consistency of questions and responses. If we start to get too much where these feel like suggestions and people are saying different things, it's hard to say, this is the data that we can extrapolate from that.
Stick to the criteria, basically.
Yeah, basically, that. Now, if there are certain things that we know from just looking at this, there's no way to accommodate things that are important, then we'll make room for that. And there's always flexibility, but walking through, I think each of the questions will help us understand, like what we're going for here.
Right.
So one of the things that we want to be able to demonstrate is that, and I brought pens. I think I have enough pens for everybody. But one of the things that we want to demonstrate is that people have community ties to Gilroy. And that's going to be important for several different reasons. One, to combat a common myth that people are all moving here from other places.
Right.
Also, to argue for solutions here in Gilroy. We need Gilroy-based solutions because folks live here in Gilroy. This is where their community is. So number one is just a straightforward, however many years or months, I mean, if it's a matter of months, we write that down, but we want to get a sense of the length of time that somebody has been living in Gilroy as a resident. And this does not mean living as somebody who has a physical address. That means how long would you say, as the person completing this, that you have lived in Gilroy?
Right.
Now, we want to demonstrate different community ties, right? Because they may say, hey, look, you live in Gilroy now, but you're going to have to just move away because we all just live in a world where maybe it's too expensive, so you're going to have to move to the next least expensive town. People do that all the time. They, might want to live in San Jose, but they buy in Gilroy because they can't afford San Jose. Whatever.
Right.
To combat that, we need to show that there are specific ties to the community that go beyond just length of time you've been here.
Right.
And that's what some of these kind of check marks are for. These are some of the things that a criminal court would look at to consider releasing somebody on their own recognizance. Like
Coaching, things like that.
yeah, exactly. So I didn't ask specifically about coaching, but what a great example of the type of thing that should be included there. That's something. So I put an other line, but you've got a number of different things, like you're born here, you were raised here, your extended family is from here, you went to school or go to school here, you worked here, you are, whatever. Like you want to demonstrate the ties, and you want people to mark off all that apply.
Right, I see that.
And so eventually, let's say we have 100 people who fill it out, we could say, of the people who completed it, like 50% were born here.
Right.
And but that's of those same people that were born here, they may have other ties. And what we're really trying to show is it's not just a function of my preference is to live in Gilroy. You have a life here in Gilroy.
Exactly.
You've got ties. So that's what this is for. And that other line, feel free to use that generously, because I didn't put down like I coach here or other things.
Right.
Garlic Farm,
Doctor
Yeah.
appointments.
Yeah.
doctor's appointments.
Yeah, I didn't put services here. That's these are probably oversights that can be corrected, but let's put it in other. And if enough folks have it, we can still extrapolate.
Right.
So that's that. The next set of questions are really designed around to get at the current living situation. So we can describe how people are currently sheltered and in what capacity.
Right.
Right, so a tent can be a tent or a makeshift structure, but you can determine as the person giving the survey or completing the survey, like, okay, it's not exactly a tent, it's, like tarps
Lean-to.
with,
Yeah.
exactly, a lean-to.
Right.
You can either mark that as tent or other. It's really just to capture the kind of cloth structure. And there is a definition of tent that's in the ordinance.
Yes, it
We
is.
can, talk about that. So we can use that to inform it. But we want to have, a sense of the situation, the shelter that a person is using now. So I've differentiated car from RV. I know that there are other things, like trailers, things
Right.
like that. Again, there's an other line. And people can kind of interpret for themselves, like, well, it's a camper, it's not exactly an RV, but it's not a car, so I'm going to put down RV. That's fine. I
Right.
think we can do that. If folks are, staying in shelters, hotels, staying with friends and family, again, this is a check all that apply. So sometimes folks will, rent a hotel room for a few days.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll stay with their sister for a few days, but other days they're in tents. They should mark all three.
Right,
Okay.
hotel and motel is the same, interchangeable.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we living with someone if they're living around us? No. I mean, like in a small group?
That's a good clarifying question, because that's, to me, that's the difference between living in community
Yes.
versus household. So this question is really designed to get at who is in what would be your household. I think there's questions that get at like some of the community
Yeah, there is.
aspect later. But this is really to be interpreted for what you would consider your home, your structure.
Inside your tent.
And again, this is, this is not a perfect science. This is this is what we're doing to try to get a snapshot. So, feel free to just write in myself.
Yeah,
whatever.
My dog.
Yeah.
There is there's one or more pets or service animals.
So I guess I just wanted to throw in there that these are the folks from Sausalito, Nevada, that I was mentioning yesterday. Robbie was on the phone. Now he's on Zoom, and so we're just supporting all over the state as we can.
Okay, cool. Hi, Robbie.
Hi,
Robbie.
I don't know if we do have this in place or not, but as we do this list with other people, I think it's important that we all know who we've talked to and whether, so that it doesn't get questioned again or answered again.
Well,
in survey.
they'll know
Or
because
sections.
it's a one survey.
No, but what I'm saying is,
we're not going to go survey the
the
same
same
people
people
twice.
they did.
Right.
I'm going to survey one, and then
Yeah.
they come and survey the same person.
Oh, that's
But
true,
if-
that's true.
If that person, if you say, have you filled out the
Oh, that's
survey
true.
before?
We can't really.
So yeah, you can. You
Yeah,
just
it's
go,
gonna be
amongst ourselves, we have to get together. Where do you want to go?
Yeah.
That's
Right,
what
and go
I'm
as a
trying to get
team.
out.
Yeah,
But
go as
as
a team.
we
Right.
get together, us will divide
Yeah,
the city up
yeah,
into
exactly.
areas.
I just want to
But
make sure that.
it's just like the point in time count. They have a survey and they ask you, the first question is, have you filled this out before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do about the medically handicapped mentally?
You can fill it out for them.
There you go.
You just ask the question.
They just said
Matter
at
of
the
fact, you should
beginning,
probably do that for
Fill
everybody.
it out for everybody.
You ask the question and you write down the answer as opposed to handing it to
Well,
them.
my more important question is whether that's going to be okay or not.
Why
Because
not?
because
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing it for them. I mean, how do we know? How
Because-
does anybody else know that if they looked up that the people were medically ill, mentally, are they going to accept these?
Look,
If they're incompetent
If they're
or
part of the
competent
homeless
enough.
community, yeah, they have to accept it because they are part of the community.
I think most people are going to give you accurate answers.
I mean, hey, if it's
For the most part.
you're gonna,
Yeah.
so
Talking to themselves.
it's like the average. You know, throw out the top high, throw out the low, and you get the average, whatever.
Yeah. So to be, I'm glad that we're talking about this. This is why we're going over the survey now. So this is not the type of evidence that is designed to produce like a document that we would submit to a court. What this is a snapshot of the community. So if you have a person you're concerned about whether they are competent to understand the questions and to provide responsive answers, then we're just not going to survey that person.
That's what I'm.
Because we don't need 100%. What we need to be able to say is that we've gotten to a percentage, a significant percentage of the people
Right.
that we know are out, so that we can extrapolate from that and say these are the truths of the community that are living
Do you
outside.
mark those
Right.
down though? Like, as like, okay, we did try, but there was no way of getting any answers?
We still come as a person, yeah.
I think the way that my response to that would be, if that's helpful for your tag team and dividing up, it would not be necessary for the purposes that we want to use it for like advocacy purposes. I don't think we would, because there's not like a talking point where we'd say we tried to survey,
Right.
X number of people and we
This
couldn't.
is what was done.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
what was done.
So this is wonderful, and I understand surveying and everything, except the time is gone
For what?
surveying. They're
Okay.
they're making our stay extremely difficult, and to get out and survey seems to me moot because we don't have the time to even be here to say we're a resident. We're being told we have to leave, like the whole city.
So we're gonna go over. We're
What
gonna.
is the point of a survey though if we don't even, I mean, this is like something that's gonna be done when you have time to consider, you know, and you want to stay. Right now, it's like they don't want us to stay, and I'm really feeling like I don't want to really either, you know.
Got it.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
Well,
We
that's
were-
what
we were
it's
being
meant to
threatened
do.
with citations and jail.
Yeah.
Understood.
I just don't understand, you know.
What's the point? What's the point of this thing,
We need a
especially at this
foundation.
point after it's already been adopted? There's a
let's
30-day
put it this way.
countdown.
Right.
We were gone
And 30
working
days
one
is
day.
like a week.
and
Yeah,
we were
Yeah.
gone working one day and we came home and where our fifth wheel is, they fenced it off with my daughter in fifth
Oh
wheel.
my God.
Yeah.
They
Totally-
what?
totally
Fenced it
fenced
off.
in. And
We had
we
to
couldn't
cut the
get in,
fence
she
in order
couldn't
for me
get
to
out.
go see if my daughter was safe.
That was, I mean, they were entrapping us into breaking the law
It's a
because, yeah, absolutely. And they, and you know what they did? They did nothing about it. So then the fence gets taken down. Then they come back out again.
Then they put it
We
back up.
do it all over again, half-assed. Pardon my language. And then
Big.
we're standing around going, okay, we're victims of circumstance, and where we're at here, we're looking just as guilty as anybody else for having broken it. What do they do about that? Absolutely nothing.
Other than
But
rinse
yet-
and repeat.
And,
Yeah.
and then send in
Steal all your stuff.
police units nonstop through our area, and then they stop and watch us. And they never come and approach us, but they stop and watch us, and then they send out city officials and they send out, other people like that, and it's like.
Well, boss, I think that tells you that they don't know what to do and that they're probably breaking the law.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I
Because
mean,
The more
they're sending
documented
so
that.
many people out.
Okay.
Isn't another resident?
Can we address the
Yeah.
question, the first question you had? What is the point?
yeah.
Okay, before we go on to all this other stuff? Okay, you wanna?
Yeah, so, I mean, that is a very valid question. It's a good question. And in an ideal world, these questions would have been asked to folks a long time ago to set the policy. This would have been the data that informs the policy. But that's not where we're at. Where we are at is we can use different types of strategies to push back on what they're about to enforce. One of them could be a lawsuit. But if we don't know what we're fighting for, then we are moving down a road with no destination. This is to help develop the demands. What is it that this community actually needs? Who is the community? What do they want and need? And this will help illuminate some of that. That's relevant for a lawsuit because if we were to march in, you and I, did we meet yesterday?
No.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Tristia Bauman. I am a senior attorney at the National Homelessness Law Center where I worked for 11 years. I have been a practicing attorney for 17 years and I have engaged in federal litigation to stop these types of ordinances across the country. I'm currently the housing director at the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley, which has active litigation against the city of Gilroy now, and I'm a Gilroy resident. So all of those things are my background to say that there are legal strategies, but I can tell you if the legal strategy is divorced from the organizing and from what people want, we might march in, get a legal win that has zero impact on what you just described and never get you what you're actually looking for and what you want. So point well taken that this survey is late in the game. This is something that should have happened a long time ago, but this will help lay the foundation for what we're fighting for in the courts and out of the courts, because part of what you hope for, and you heard this from Robbie yesterday, part of what you hope for in an action is not just a legal win, but for an opportunity to negotiate a settlement where you can establish a different way forward. So some of these questions are designed to get at what are some of the safe alternatives that people would accept and under what conditions while housing is sought. And that's part of the purpose. But we also want to show that these are folks that are not coming in from anywhere and who can't just be sent anywhere. They're Gilroy residents who have specific needs, who will suffer specific harms, and have specific desires around where they want to go. And that's really what the point is of this. And because this is a tool and not, a piece of evidence that we would submit on its own, it can lead us to evidence. It could result in us saying, hey, this is, these survey results. We don't need perfection here. What we need is enough for us to have a sense of what the roadmap is. What's the destination? What are we doing? What are we fighting for? Because we can't just fight against this and win. We could overturn this. They'll pass something else.
Right,
Through the
exactly.
survey, we're gonna find out there's a lot of common denominators that
Here's a percentage of.
the percentage of that's gonna help everybody.
It may be too late for some of us, maybe, but at least it starts something for everybody, that's coming.
Basically, we're playing catch up, but at
Yeah.
18.
But you gotta start
just don't
somewhere.
know
In other
how I
words,
can
what
focus
they
on
ended
this.
up
I'm
doing
just
is not
I need to
having
get
the
back to my
data.
stuff right now, or
They
else
turned around and
That's the way I
said,
used to feel. So,
there's 75 to 100
no
people
other
out
reason
here.
otherwise.
But here's where the situation is.
Yeah.
Where are we going? But the more data we have now, that by the time July 19th comes around, the better we are.
July 19th.
July 19th is when this ordinance.
That's in
We're gonna,
Salinas.
that'll be the second part, and I take your point that you, like, any moment away from your stuff feels threatening, so I get that. We're not gonna waste people's time here. You know, we're gonna go over what the ordinance says. This is the adopted ordinance.
I'm not speaking in that way. I'm not trying to say I want to leave here to go and do that. I'm saying in like the agenda on our list, our what we're trying to accomplish is to survive and then get some rest, you know, and then so we can figure something out.
That's right.
And we can't even get that, you know. So I'm not. And then everybody around us, most of all of them have been kicked out or left, but the demographic is such that those folks wouldn't make a very good.
But it's still input.
Okay, it's still input, but it would be to a negative.
Have you heard?
Because of the
There
criminality
is no
issues.
negative or positive here.
There's still people who, they're, you know, regardless
There's
of,
still people, I understand.
and who have a need, have an unmet need, and whose rights are threatened with violation under this ordinance, which becomes effective 30 days after it was adopted, and it was adopted June 19th.
Man, so I mean, we're being told by the authorities completely different dates.
Really?
Yeah, the 5th is what we've been told. Like since the last Chamber of Commerce meeting that was here in Gilroy,
We were told that they were going to start issuing citations on the 5th.
Yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
would
yeah, how
They
correct we
actually
are.
started issuing them a lot earlier than that. They've already started issuing them.
I mean, honestly, if they were to try to do that, that opens up a lot more ground to
Oh.
challenge it, because this does not become effective for
Oh,
30
they're in
days after
trouble.
adoption. So my guess is that they're threatening
Yes.
to do that, creating misinformation so
Yes.
that you'll respond and
then doing
vacate.
things like, oh, excuse me, well, let me tell you where you can go.
But let me turn off my mic
By
first.
the quality of life control officers. Okay?
Quality.
Where
That's
they
what
say-
they are.
where
they say-
Quality-
You mean Bob
quality of
Griffin?
life Control officers.
Yeah,
They
that's what
used
they
to be
call them.
code enforcement, but now they're the quality of life control officers. Okay?
Fucking bullshit.
That's
They
exactly
changed the
what they
title.
told me. And then they said, if you want to live homeless, and I said, if I want to live homeless,
Right.
if you're living homeless, then you need to find another city to do
That's
it
what
in.
they, yeah.
That's
You
what
need to go to
I
the
said,
next town.
okay,
Mhm.
well, and then he said, but, let me tell you, and he turns off his body mic and his camera, as if to, on the low,
Oh,
give me a
on
head-
camera, he said you're going to have to leave the city?
No, oh,
And
yeah.
then turned it off.
Yeah, but
To say where.
then afterwards,
Then
then
he
he
turns
turns
it
it off.
Did
and
you
says,
guys get the copy?
PRA that.
Now,
Or
now
do we
you
know
can
the
go
copy?
to any valley water district body of water. And I said, you know what, I don't see that to be the truth, because
a lie.
at that chamber meeting, it lays out the no zone, okay? And one of those no zone areas is any body of
Yes.
body of water. And he says, well, you know, the Santa Clara Valley Water District, you can live on, you can stay on the property in a 11 by 11 square. I said 11 by 11. I have a 30-foot fifth wheel RV. What did you know?
He says, well, then
we're
you
supposed
can't
to cut it in
live
half.
there.
He's all,
They
well,
don't
you're
care
gonna have
about
to
that.
get rid of your RV.
Yeah, they don't care about that.
Oh, and then he says, you know, you can go to the shelter. There's a 2-month wait for the shelter,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it's only a men's or women's. We're married, and we have a stepdaughter and 2 cats, and those cats are our therapy. You know, they're our love, they're our family. We're not going to get rid of them, but they're giving us ultimatums. They're not giving us
And the
choices.
thing is
They're
it's
giving us
one
do or
cop saying
don't.
this, and then another cop is saying something totally different. So they're
Yeah.
just
So let's, yeah, so I mean, I want to pause this. That's,
sorry, Ed.
this is the
The
most
threat is real.
important part of the conversation, what you guys are raising, but I don't want to jump over this survey, because I think this survey is part of the process. I also want to say that just because they're telling you certain, well, number one, it sounds like they're saying things that would not be constitutionally permissible, and they're saying that on the record. So knowing who the officer is so that we can get that data would be another key part of how we move forward.
yeah.
The threats that they're, you know, lobbing against you, we're going to go over what the ordinance actually says, because this will determine what they
Can do.
can do according to this code. But even beyond what is permitted under this code will be limitations imposed by superior sources of law, like the Constitution, and we're going to get there too. We're not going to do all of that in one day. Today is survey, what the ordinance says, and then hearing from anybody about threats and messaging about where people are supposed to go, when they're going to start enforcing, and then next up we're going to do a constitutional rights presentation with it. So there are questions about people's desires. This next set of questions are like yes, no, or checklist, and then some ranking, okay? So first, I want to live in housing. I'm expecting that we're going to get universal yeses, but we are counteracting the myth that people are not wanting housing. We are going to ask about and record people's efforts to obtain housing. So, the waiting list for housing. Are you on one? How long have you been on one?
Right.
Then also the barriers that you've experienced to accessing housing. And there are a number of different ones. I printed it on both sides, so be aware that this is a double-sided. So again, mark everything that is relevant. The application cost to the credit history, whatever it is. That's a barrier that you have experienced, or the survey respondent has experienced. Then we're going to talk about things. This is less for the city. Although it is intended for the city, this is intended for the service providers, because part of what building a movement is not just to combat something that the city's trying to do, it's laying out a groundwork for other stakeholders.
Right.
So if the Compassion Center, for example, were to say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to set up, a tiny home village, and it's going to have all of these different regulations like no pets, then that's not going to be acceptable. And we need to note that, so that when there are alternatives that are set up, or ones that we fight for in the context of a case, we're not fighting for things that you don't want. We're fighting for things that are actually acceptable living conditions. So those are things that you would mark off. There's an other there. Then here, again, this is going to seem like a duh question, but I need a safe and stable place to live until I can access housing. This is a yes or no.
Yeah.
And what we want to show is that yes, people need safe and stable places to live. And we're gathering this, and we'll have an evidentiary basis for it in the form of these survey responses, which unfortunately is somehow needed, because even though people have been showing up to city council hearings and saying it, they're not hearing it.
Right, yeah. So at city council, they were making a lot of statements that were not true. And one of the things that they said is that people want to live outside, and the people making the choices.
Yeah, I know.
There a lot of things that they say are myths, but this is how you disprove a myth.
Right.
With solid data.
They don't have any counter data. They're not going to be able to show that they did documented outreaches to folks and actually documented what they were.
No, yeah.
They didn't.
And Compassion Center didn't do it either.
No, these are assumptions on their part.
These are assumptions that we're going to be able to dispel. That's another purpose of doing this process. Then the next is asking about different safe and stable options. This one is, instead of doing a ranking, because I thought that could be hard, I thought just the checks. So we'll see like what the top, the top vote getters
Now
are.
it says do not apply. I mean, is that just one? They can only answer 1 on 11.
So for could be safe. Good catch. That is an edit. So I think we should check all that apply.
Okay.
Number 11?
Yeah.
Because that asks for different options, and we don't want people to feel that they have to choose between staying in their RV and there being
or a tiny home.
Yeah, like a tiny home and set up. So it would be everything that seems acceptable, and maybe it's all of them, and maybe it's not. We'll see what the data shows. And then now this last set of questions is about the effect of the ordinance. I do not know where I can legally sleep or rest once the new camping ban is enforced, yes or no.
Right.
I have not heard a single person who says that they really feel like they know.
No, we don't.
When we were supposed to do the math.
It's the answer has been
Yeah, another town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
I
town.
mean, it's like San Jose. Where, in my mind, I'm thinking, where is a tent going to fit in San Jose? I mean, really.
They're not thinking that though.
No, I'm sure they're not.
No, they're not.
But
thinking at all.
Campbell
They're
did
just
the same
spewing
thing.
words.
The city of Campbell did the same thing. They got rid of all their
Biding
people
time.
by forcing them out. Right.
Right.
And then so now they're claiming, like somebody was saying about this Texas saying, oh, we housed all these people. They kicked them out. All right. That's how they solved their problem. But just like, okay, at one time there was certain mayors that would offer people, unhoused people, one-way ticket to Hawaii.
Right.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
Because they can't
I've heard
swim
of
back. All right, once they dumped them on there, but once the governor of Hawaii found out what was going on, he turned around and sued those different cities.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, so this is the sort of thing that if they're trying to send people to San Jose or anywhere else, that's illegal. They
That's
cannot.
what the Compassion Center is doing.
Yeah,
They're sending people to San Jose for the housing.
Okay, so
yeah, and
we need to
including
document
Santa
that.
Clara.
But that's what she's trying to say with this paper.
So the last set of questions, like I said, is about the effect of the ordinance. So, one, identifying that people don't know where they can go, because part of the city's claim is this is constitutional under the Martin v. Boise case because it doesn't criminalize all places. Which is, that's we're going to talk about what the ordinance does in just a moment, but that's one of their claims. The other thing is this is going to highlight some of the harms that people can reasonably foresee will affect them if the ordinance is enforced. So this lays out some, common harms. Service connections are disrupted. I'm going to lose my property.
Right.
It'll harm my medical treatment. It's going to interrupt my ability to access housing. They're here, and then there's an other space, and you can write down, a number of different things. The last question is, I'll tell you my philosophy in including it here. Is I'm guessing a lot of people are going to answer this one no. And what we want to show is the futility of enforcing this, because there will be people who are deeply harmed, who are not going to leave Gilroy
Yeah.
as a result of this ordinance.
One
This
of
is an
them.
expensive exercise in harm.
Like, we have a mother that's elderly. I came back to California because I was afraid I would miss if she passed, and that would devastate me. So I'm not leaving this town. 10
Right.
years ago, they tried to kick me out, and I told them, my mother lives here. I came here because of her. Homeless or not, I'm not leaving.
That's right.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
leaving. So
I've heard
it's-
from a bunch of people that say that same thing,
Yeah.
and they cannot constitutionally force you to leave.
Well, they did because I said I'm not going. I'm not going to go. Twice he came for me under the bridge and then out at the garlic place. And I told him no. And then he just shut up and left.
So, how many of you know what Martin v. Boise is?
Yes.
I've heard of it. We're not sure. I'm not sure completely. But I
I've
know
had
what
the
it
cops
is.
tell me the words. Actually,
Oh, okay. I'm going to refer to the expert.
So we will go over it in more detail in the future, but let me do a quick primer on Martin. So my last office brought the case, and it's a lawsuit that was against the city of Boise, brought on behalf of 6 people who were living in the city of Boise, who were being penalized under 2 different laws. One was a camping ban that outlawed all the things that we think of when we think of camping.
Right.
The other was a disorderly conduct law where sleeping and camping was considered disorderly conduct.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. And this common across the country. In Boise, the point in time count, which we know is an undercount, but even that undercount was greater than the total number of available shelter spaces. They had more than Gilroy has. They had a few different places that were available, but only a few. They were segregated by gender, and there was one that after 17 days, you had to enroll in their religious programming in
Oh,
order to
wow.
stay longer.
wow.
And
It's the Northwest.
and so there were people that even when the shelter providers would say, hey, we've got space, people could come and show up, there would be people who wouldn't be able to access those spaces for a number of different reasons, either because they were the wrong age, wrong gender, or because it would cause them to it would conflict with their religious principles. And we have a First Amendment freedom to not have to give up our religious freedom in exchange for not being prosecuted for our existence. So
Blackmail.
it essentially was. And so one of the arguments in the Martin v. Boise case, and the primary one that people talk about, is the 8th Amendment's cruel and unusual punishments clause. So when we talk about the 8th Amendment, there are several amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about amendments to the Constitution under the Bill of Rights. The 8th Amendment prohibits certain things like excessive fines. It also prohibits imposition of cruel and unusual punishments. So what does that mean? Well, in the context of the Martin case, what it means, and this is based on Supreme Court precedent, that you cannot punish a person, and in this context we mean like criminally punish. The Martin case dealt with criminal ordinances just like we're dealing with here. You cannot impose a criminal penalty on somebody for engaging in universal, unavoidable conduct like sleeping, sitting, lying down, or setting down your property at some point, when they are involuntarily in public space and lack access to any alternative space, because punishing them in that way is akin to punishing a person for their very status, which you're not allowed to do. You cannot punish a person criminally punish a person based on their status.
That's what's happening here, all right.
That's exactly what's happening here. Now the city is saying, look, we're not doing what Boise did, because that was an all day, every day, in all locations ban. This is just 500 feet from schools and daycares and parks and 5 feet from, we're going to go over all the places. And then they put together that BS map that only had a few of the locations that were blocked out. And they said, look, this amounts to 24% of the city. That leaves 3/4 of the city for everyone. And people pointed out, well, what about private property? Does that, does your map exclude private property? No. What about places that would be regulated by other laws? Like we can't sleep in the middle of the street, or other places that would be regulated by other laws. No, those aren't excluded. And in fact, even all of the banned areas under this ordinance aren't excluded. So now it starts to look a lot more like Martin v. Boise. I want to tell you about another case. It's Johnson v. City of Grants Pass. So that's the second case where the Ninth Circuit recently, after Martin, said we're upholding the principle in Martin that you cannot punish a person for performing these universal, unavoidable resting acts in public space when they lack alternatives.
Right.
Now we'll talk in a minute about what those alternatives might be. But in Grants Pass, they didn't have these ordinances that apply at all times in all places. They had a patchwork of different laws, kind of similar to what you've got going on in Gilroy, that functionally left no place in the city of Grants Pass where people could be. They also didn't immediately go to criminal penalties. They would start with a ticket, and after a ticket you could be trespass banned from the area, and if you were to return to the area, like the park, then they would prosecute you for a crime.
Yeah, we do that here all the time.
And what the Ninth Circuit said, and the Ninth Circuit is the highest appellate court in this part of the country. So the only thing above the Ninth Circuit here is the U.S. Supreme Court. So what the Ninth Circuit says binds this town. What they said was, you cannot use civil penalties that are so inextricably linked with criminal punishment to try to get around Martin. So the use of tickets in an effort to ultimately criminalize people, but doing it first with ticket leading to a trespass ban, still falls within the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. Because Grants Pass tried to say, no, it's not criminalizing because it's just a civil penalty. They're just tickets. And then later, it's this whole separate thing, trespass. No, they can't do that. That's not exactly what they're doing here. They might try to get fancy and do that here too.
Right.
But you can't do that. You also can't, they expanded Martin to say it's not just the resting conduct. It's not just the sleeping, sitting, and lying down that was at issue in the Martin case. It's also taking, and this is quoting, rudimentary measures to keep yourself warm and dry. So they cannot punish a person for using a blanket. They can't punish a person for doing the activities that were at issue in the Grants Pass case.
Right.
So having a tent here during the day to relax, like anybody else in town, they can't punish us for that.
Right.
Well, so it's unfortunately here. So those are some of the broad parameters. Here's some real downsides, and we should just be aware that there are some real downsides. You do have rights, and there are mechanisms to go in to protect those rights. But the reality is they're limited. They're limited in ways that are not going to make sense to you as a human being surviving. For example, the court at the Ninth Circuit said, and they didn't say this as part of the decision, but they indicated it might be constitutional to ban tents in parks.
Yeah, because they say you can't camp here, right? Okay. But you can have a tent up there during the day.
Yeah.
Like some people have babies. They put them in the tent for the mosquitoes and such. Other people are older, they go in the tent, they rest in the shade over here. Seen it done lots of times. They have parties out here, they put tents for their children that take them out.
Canopy thing.
Oh yeah, I see it all the time.
Yeah, so what I don't understand how they can just turn that. and make it, it's okay that, not here.
So there are kind of two responses to that. One is they define tent in the ordinance. So, we can talk about what would be permitted and what would not be. The type of canopy that you often see when folks
Right.
have their parties here, that doesn't seem to be
A problem.
that doesn't seem to be prohibited under this definition of tent. Something with 4 walls.
Party time.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
with 4
4
walls
walls.
and a roof. Now that starts looking like one of the prohibited tents.
Right.
And it's because, and it's patently obvious to everyone here, this was designed to carve out a set of punishments for a specific group of people
Yes.
based on their status.
Right.
Absolutely.
And they're
That's why we're
trying
here.
exactly, and they're trying to.
Why aren't there more of us here?
There will be.
You were here yesterday.
Yeah, you're growing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Our first meeting was yesterday.
They're gonna show up. We'll get more people and more people. Once they see this and they see that we have backup,
Yeah.
people will be more likely to want to join.
Because I'm pretty
Yeah, I
sure
know.
you guys are gonna go out there.
Now
Okay,
we've got a
I've said
voice.
this
around
before.
a meeting, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, wear your
Actually-
t-shirt.
no, we don't know anybody.
Well, we really, it's through safety mechanism as stick to our own.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're in a dangerous area, honestly.
Go
People
places.
who've been stabbed and shot and everything else,
Well-
that's the world. I get that, but I'm not super, I mean, I want to tell people that there's answers and that there's possibilities.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks don't care. I mean, seriously, they
And that's
they just,
okay.
Well,
and that is okay. That is okay. But I wish I was in a
Yeah,
different.
you're gonna go with
Right.
people who
Okay.
do.
But before you came to this meeting, you probably didn't care.
No, I did.
But now that you have heard what's going on, now you care.
I cared the whole time. I've cared because I wanted to make something happen, and I just didn't know how to do it.
Okay, that's what these things are for too. Okay? Because this is power. This is real power.
it is. It is because a homeless voting block, man. We can put somebody out. Jan only lost by 600 votes.
601.
I didn't vote because I was like everybody else for a long time because I saw no light at the end of the tunnel. Why vote? It's not going to matter. They're
I
going to
know,
do
what
what they
does my
want
vote
anyway.
count for?
You know, and then I found out that no, I registered last year, but I didn't vote. You know, which was crazy, or the few years back. But now, you see, the people around here need to know that there's somebody behind them, or we won't do. I know this town, they won't do. They got to have backup. We have backup now, and if we explain that to everybody, more will show, more will come, we'll grow, it'll get bigger, it'll help. Maybe not you or me this year or next year, but for the future too, you know. We're not just doing it for today. You know, bro? So, that's what
It's hard to see beyond the problem.
I know.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does
I'm-
make sense. And there are a lot of different ways forward and different tools to use. So registering to vote, the country doesn't vote often. Here, in order to get somebody on the city council, there are certain people who voted yes for this ordinance that will affect your life that have 3,000 plus votes. That's it. In a town of about 60,000 people. The point in time count showed, what was it? It was like 600.
I heard 800 something.
800.
Yes.
800. That's more than 20%. If there were a voting block of people who are unhoused just voting and getting behind certain candidates, that's more than 20% of some of the total votes of the folks on the council. And we have other allies. That's a voting block you have to reckon with. But doing this first and then voting are part of that process. A lawsuit is another potential process, and I want to be real clear about this because the last thing I want to do is create false expectations. So I want to explain a couple things, right? So having done these kinds of lawsuits, I can tell you that they are tools and can be very helpful, but only if they're part of movements. A lawsuit in and of itself that's disconnected from real organizing, from a real destination, a plan, this is what we're actually fighting for, will not produce meaningful change because governments have so many different ways that they can get past a lawsuit. All right, fine, we repeal that law. Fine, we can't enforce that. We'll just enact something else. So this is part of the reason why we're joining together, figuring out what are the things we're fighting for and leveraging on all policy fronts and legal fronts to advance the agenda that you set for yourselves. because you're the leaders here. And you've got supporters.
You know what's crazy, really, is that in actuality, what we're doing here is helping the city.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Doing their job for them.
The irony is
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
it's crazy.
Well, you gotta, I guess they say
We're
you
trying to get
gotta.
ourselves off the street so we can eliminate the police force from having to come out to calls where they can do other things better. You know, but they don't see that. They don't see that this is a plus. I don't understand.
Why reach out
Because
a
to
hand
give-
when you can knock the guy down?
Yeah,
Well, and then they give it credit would be counterintuitive to their agenda, whatever their. I mean, we are the problem.
supposedly
quote
their
unquote.
agenda is us and what it represents and what we do. But if we get housing, they won't have to deal with that, which is counterproductive to what's happening with them. And
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's madness.
It is.
It doesn't make any sense.
There's a lot that doesn't make sense, and you're absolutely right. You're right. Like we're doing like good governance.
Yeah.
You know, what I can tell you based on, and I don't have the data from the city yet to back this up, but my experience in communities around the country and what I heard at the city council hearing is they're responding to complaints from people who don't want to see anyone that makes them uncomfortable, and that would be anybody
Side out of
living.
mind.
Yeah, anybody living in a setting that makes them uncomfortable, they fear it, and they want it gone.
Dirt-stained hands. You know, I mean, it's an axiom of being on the street. Really, it is. I mean, because you're dealing with dirt and yeah, we all know this, but that is where it's like I noticed for the first time was when I was being treated differently. Somebody recognized the fact that I was less than their idea of clean.
Okay.
You know, and I was like, you know,
Sounds
I
like
mean,
Jim Crow.
Doesn't it?
Ooh.
Very
Doesn't it
much so.
sound like-
Segregation, yes.
It's absolutely.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It is the same thing. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with segregation and attempt to corral and control
Discrimination.
Yeah.
and banish.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal.
And that's
Their
going to
thing
make
is
America
benefit.
great again. I mean,
Right?
we're the backbone. Of,
Another reason to vote. Another reason to get involved in the process.
Right.
it's another reason for people to get angry too, and it's difficult to. It's important to.
But anger by
recognize
itself without action does nothing.
True that, but
Okay.
angry action does wrong things too.
Somebody's got a pretty good awakening going so far. I see.
Solution is part of the problem.
But there are things that could bring out the best of you under circumstances that are beyond your
You
control.
have a daughter.
If you can look at it in a certain way and find that,
have a daughter.
you can deal with it better. You can have an answer. You know?
At the beginning, we all saw the brighter light,
Yeah,
but
we
now the
did.
light is getting dark. You know, there is no light.
I'm here
Well, that's
because
what I'm-
You guys are the light.
But
That's it.
with change will come. It takes change. It takes
That's
people
why I
to
said
get together.
it might not be us
The
right
masses.
now, man.
If there's a
You know.
bigger group of homeless than there is of not homeless, who you think is going to win that vote? But if you're not voting, you ain't going to
the
win.
mass
shit.
will win, man. This town is brought up in an old Mexican way. Okay, we have old Mexican ties, and it's don't make waves. Don't mess with your law because that's the law. You know, don't do this, don't do that.
Because the law will do what they want.
Yeah, you know, it's like, you know, our parents made us fear these things, so, you know, don't say nothing. So that's why a lot of people don't vote in this town. It's a different animal, this little town. For sure. Yeah, you know that.
But we can change that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing right now.
We're just proving we're people, man. Nothing but people. Just too poor to afford rent, but that's
Biggest
it.
thing though, I feel, at least for me, is that we have you guys. Without that, I was stuck talking to people,
Right.
No
just
kidding.
talking and talking and
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
and talking.
Not getting
Trying to
angry.
be awareing people of things that are going to happen that they will do, and it just turns out to be talk.
Do you remember a commercial that used to come out on TV and they would say, tell two people and those people tell
Yeah.
two people and those people and then it kept
Yeah.
multiplying and then
Yeah.
the whole screen was filled with
tried it.
people? That's what we need to do here. We need
Well,
to get
that's
more
what I was
people.
doing, but I'm telling you, this is a different animal here. I
It's an
talked
animal.
and talked
Well,
without
crypto
the
animal.
support. If these people in this town that I know, without knowing they have support, they're not going to try to do
Okay,
it.
well, you know that now.
Yes,
See how
I've known
tall
it all
that
the
tree
time.
is now, though, right? It was only a little sprout at one point.
That's why I said, you know, I've known this forever. We know this town really well. And that's the animal that I was fighting. And I tried to just talk with people and stuff, but I thought that would help. But again, everybody knows we didn't have no backup.
Right.
We tried to get involved when they kicked us out in 2018, remember? They tore our tent, they took all our stuff, they hired people from Home Depot to come in with the water district supervisor, with the police there a day before they were supposed to come. We were already prepared. We had all the bags for garbage picked up from the creek so that they didn't have to do it, they could just take the garbage. But what they came for really was to get me. That's what they said.
Yeah.
I said, the garbage is there. I said, no, we want your stuff. And took it all. Everything.
Okay, okay, can we continue with
Yes.
this?
What you
So
got?
we can get through
Go
this?
for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that was a little primer on one of the legal arguments. There are a number of different legal arguments, and I don't want to rule out the possibility that there could be something that could be filed quickly to try to prevent the ordinance from ever being enforced, but I don't want to promise that. I want to tell you that a lawsuit is a tool that we might want to yield, and we have backup to be able to do it. I'm the director of the housing unit at my office, so I am telling you this is a priority for me, and my office is in. We also have other offices that have expressed interest. So there is backup, and we're building it, but we're going to be operating on a lot of different fronts, right? So one of the things that I think is important for us to know is, what the ordinance says. So I'm gonna hand this out. But while I do that, thank you very much. One other thing that I'll say that is another part of it is organizing and meeting with community, because folks complain because they're ignorant.
Right.
Now there's some percentage of the ignorant that are just bigots, and that's that's it. We're not going to convince them.
Next door.
But there are a lot of folks who are just ignorant. They're not necessarily somebody who's inherently given to bigotry. They just are scared because their kid goes to school and they said, hey, there's somebody living by the river, and then that brings up a bunch of fears, and so they start complaining, and the mayor will listen to that person. Now, part of how we do the education are through tools like surveys, but also it's through connection with community. So this effort doesn't have to just be fighting. It's also connecting with folks who don't typically connect. And we can do that through events, through things that are fun. We can have parties and dances and things that actually bring people together in community. And I say that not to say that we've got a party plan, but to say that that's part of it, is connecting with one another, and we all see each other as residents of this town and figuring out for this town how we move forward. So transitioning from different tactics that include lawsuits, let's look at what this particular law says. I didn't print out everything, so if you go on the website, you're going to see a lot more. What I eliminated are what they call the whereas clauses, which lay out the city's justification for enacting this. What I included are the definitions. So the personal property definition is extremely broad. It's basically going to cover everything that you might ever want to put down. So it's like any tangible property. If it's a 3D item and it's yours and you have it, it's going to qualify as personal property under this really broad definition. Public right-of-way is also extremely broad. All property that is owned and managed or maintained by the city, and it gives a non-exhaustive list of examples. Then it separately defines sidewalks and streets. And then there's a definition of tent, which is any collapsible shelter made of fabric or tarp. And to get to the point that we talked about, what about the kind of gazebos and canopies that folks use? It's ones where it is not open on all sides and hinders an unobstructed view. Wow. So this is gonna capture any tents. What's not included in any of this are vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
The next section. So the definitions are useful. There are some important missing definitions here, and we can talk about that. And it might even be helpful if anybody tries to enforce it against you. Oops. Thank you, Robert. if anybody tries to enforce it against you, it might be useful to point out that there are, thank you, certain things that would be useful to know, like a thing that's restricted in parks and playgrounds is no person shall obstruct by sitting, lying, or sleeping, or by, and then they say storing, maintaining, or placing personal property on a, and then they reference every damn place in the city that's publicly owned. So this is really broad, and this is exactly the type of conduct that was at issue in the Martin case and the Johnson case, and it's very broad. Now, what they're going to say is, well, that's just parks and playgrounds. But what's next? Within 500 feet of any park or playground. Now, how is obstruction defined? Does that mean anytime you're sitting down in a park or playground?
Who are you obstructing?
What are you obstructing? Yeah, who knows? I mean, and these are the types of legal arguments that we make, and these may be the types of questions that are asked, especially if they're wearing body cams.
And 500 feet, what is that? As bird flies or?
Yes.
Thank you very much. There isn't a clear calculation. So again, maybe there's an argument there. We could say it's vague, right? So like if you have moved away 500 feet based on pacing or using a ruler, have you complied? You're attempting to comply. What are they going to use as their measurement tool?
Right.
And I can tell you right now, they're not going to use a measurement tool. They've just decided that they're if you're within eyesight of a park. And somebody complains about you is probably the other unstated thing. They're going to come and try to get you. They're not going to measure it out.
Right.
What if you build a tree house 500 feet above?
Yeah, there you go.
1 feet above, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they didn't stay above.
I like to dig holes.
Underground.
Yeah, if we go underground,
I've got a hammock. I think I'm going to go hammock camping.
There you go.
So, but that's another. So when I don't want people to overly rely on the map. That's why we're going through this, because the map did not have all of the excluded areas. It had some of the red zones, some of the big ones. So it should have included the parks and playgrounds. It should have included the within 500 feet, but it didn't have others.
So again, then they're gonna profile us because the regular people, whatever, you know what I'm saying. The people with homes, so they can sit and lie, I guess. I mean, how do they do that?
We're going to get to how they're going to claim that they're going to do it, and that is going to be part of the 14th Amendment. We'll talk, I think, we could talk next time about in more detail about the 14th Amendment, but let me tell you this. The 14th Amendment protects due process, and it protects you equally. So have you ever heard of the Equal Protection Clause? Equal protection. Similarly situated people should be treated equally under the law. So what you're asking about is, potentially an equal protection violation that's being set up. Because
Under the law.
yeah. Because, if somebody comes in, there's one person sitting here, they're not bothered at all. The next person, an officer decides, hey,
That's what the benches are for.
it's literally designed for sitting. This, parks are meant for the purpose.
To enjoy.
That's right. But there is a, later in the law, you'll see the very vague guidance that will absolutely lead to selective enforcement that they think protects them. But these give us, it's really bad news. I don't want to say that it's not going to be a problem for people who are going to have this enforced against them, but from a legal standpoint, it's a weakness that we can attack. Meaning from the, a challenge, legal challenge standpoint.
Also known as a chink in the chain.
Yeah.
Right.
So moving on, there's other public rights of way, and then they describe other public rights of way. And again, it's not, no person shall obstruct by. My guess is they're going to enforce it if they see anybody sitting, lying down, sleeping, or putting a thing on anything that could be qualified as public property.
Well, they're certainly going to see that if you don't have 4 walls.
That's right. Now, there are arguments that we can make about that because obstruction is a qualifier, right? So it doesn't say no sitting. It says no, you shall not obstruct by sitting. So obstruction, when I practiced in Florida, when I practiced criminal law, people would be charged with obstruction, but we could defend against that by saying nobody had to take evasive action to get around them. There still was plenty of sidewalk space for a person to walk by. It didn't block points of ingress and egress. So how was it obstruction? It was just using part of a space. Yeah, using part of a space, existing in that space. So again, chinks in armor that we're identifying, but we should know just for purposes of understanding what they're likely to do and what it says, that's what it says. So it also describes here in a manner that impedes passage as provided by the ADA. Now that essentially what that means is that if there's too little sidewalk space, and this has been litigated recently in some cases in Northern California, Bobby probably knows about some of these. If there's too little room on a sidewalk or any sort of pathway that a person in a wheelchair would not be able to use because the passageway is blocked.
Like a car in a sidewalk driveway. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. Or, you know, like a tent that would take up an entire sidewalk, that would be really hard to challenge. Even under this ordinance, that would be hard to challenge. If there's enough room for a wheelchair to go by, then it's a lot easier to say that there was not obstruction, that it was compliant with the ADA. And it's actually this provision that makes some people think that a lot of folks are going to go downtown because the sidewalks are larger.
You know, I find kind of funny too is that there are places in this town on the sidewalks with signs that are put on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Where you
So
can't get by them.
how does that get by? I mean, come on now. What, they don't get we can't file a grievance against them for blocking the street?
You
the
sure
sidewalk?
could. Good point. There are when I say there are a lot of legal tools, there are a lot of legal tools, and some of them could be reasonable accommodations requests for yourself, grievances against ADA violations in other capacities. Disability Rights California has a lawsuit against San Diego and they were suing the city for having contracts with the Lime bikes, you know, those Lime bikes, those scooters, where people could just drop them in the middle of the sidewalk.
I know that's in Salt Lake City.
You know, so
everywhere.
Yeah, and so like there are things that are allowed that absolutely obstruct the same passageways that human beings are not allowed to obstruct under this.
People on bicycles hit those signs, you know, quite often. I mean,
I have.
you know, these two, I know for a fact.
Cite it and complain.
You know, I'm like, okay, so it's okay for you, but not for us, and we're in the park. But that's on the street where it's high profile, a lot of people, and they put the sign like in front of Taco Bell. They got a pole on the corner. They got another sign that sits right in the middle, but it's 4x4 and 4x4 apart, and then a tree. Okay, so it's like, you know, but that's okay.
And the thing is the city might say, well, yes, that's okay, but what we can show is that their policies are not rationally related to they're not, you know, what they're doing is not rationally related to any legitimate governmental interest. And we can point to things that show they're engaging in the same activity that they're saying that justifies this ordinance. So, you know, again, a lot of potential legal arguments that could be used in a variety of ways, including in a lawsuit. So moving on, within 500 feet of any school or daycare facility, that was a big one. They talked about that a lot at the hearing.
Okay, now, there's another thing there. There are private homes that have
Daycare.
Right. So how in the heck are you going to know where they are?
That's probably some of them.
You know
Or
what I mean?
homeschooling.
Yes. I mean, come on.
You're not going to know where every single. I mean, how do we know? Some of them, I guess, have a sign out front, but
I think.
But not all of them.
I don't think they know.
Homeschooling, they don't.
And that's the other thing. They may not know. I don't know. Maybe there's a registry. I guess I could look at whether there's a registry and try to pull that.
I'm surprised they didn't run zone them already.
You can also Google it and it'll tell you.
Google it.
I know when we start pit stop, there's some like limitations that we should go through and we couldn't go through. And that was one thing. Somebody set up a camp or a tent near that close to a home.
Okay.
So I mean, a lot of it can be Google, but then again, how updated is Google?
Yeah. Right.
But you know, I don't know that they're going to have any better data. I don't know
Just
if
a
they
school
used
district.
I don't know that they used a GIS expert, like some kind of actual mapping expert to put this together. You know, they very well may have been like, you know, just using like Google Maps. Who knows, right?
Zoom in.
But we could. One of the things that I talked to Jan about was developing our own map.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, to show that there aren't places left, and also to, if there are any places left, to identify what those might be.
Quick question. With this map that you and Jan were talking about, who would it be visual to? Not the, I mean, because me and Jed are against any type of revealing any type of information to like the police department and other individuals that may use it for some type of harm versus any good. Has that been kind of laid out yet as far as who may be able to see that map when it's created?
So the type of map that I'm talking about would be a map that could be, ideally, would be generated by an expert, a mapping expert, for us.
Okay.
Now, would other people be able to get their eyes on it? Maybe. You know, I don't know that there's a way that we could really like disseminate hard copy maps to people and truly keep it fully private.
Right.
Now, so any type of map would have to be generated with the understanding that, like, you know, we can keep it private, but there's always the risk that others might get it.
Police might take it from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what kind of happened with the situation. They confiscated my phone on another situation, and they now have a location of some hidden encampments. And we're trying to fight with that situation because they went on and took my phone on Boise case. So
Now, I'm glad you raised that, because that is the type of concern that would not be implicated by this type of map, because this would literally be just mapping out what is already public. So anybody could generate a map based on this. It wouldn't reveal, and I would never recommend including things like, well, here are where the encampments are, or this is where people would want to go or should go. We wouldn't want to provide any sort of insight into that. It would just be a map for people to have an understanding of all the places that are prohibited. You can see if there are places that would be allowable. But the reality is, because of the intent of this, even if there are places that are left over, if people start going to those places en masse, they're going to target those places next. The reason why, what I think, I'm not in the city's mind, but I would bet everything I have that the reason why they said go to the Valley Water District is so that they can be like, okay,
We're done.
we don't have to do it.
Right.
But Valley Water District's then going to do it. It's not a safe place where you can be. It's not a lawful location. It's just Gilroy saying this would be out of our hands because we're not going to take point on doing that.
That's their problem now.
Yeah.
That was a city police officer that said that, and then turn around and the sheriff said, "Oh, well, then you'll deal with me."
And that's exactly right. That's why you're getting two different messages, because it's two different jurisdictions, and they both are saying the intent is to use this to chase people entirely out of town and from public view, and they're not planning on where people go.
They don't care.
They don't care, and they can't do that.
Town to be a vineyard.
That's
You
right.
make more money by kicking you around and finding you again.
In
Perpetual
the first
criminals.
city council meeting, they said that they would, is there any, when we're done with this, people will know where they can go? Yes, and they haven't done that.
No.
They've adopted it, and
Yeah.
people don't know where they can go, and
Yeah.
all they handed out was that, partially complete map.
And they also are saying that if you're saying no, okay, that you can't go or won't go, they're going to instantly give you a citation. Instantly, right? But I mean, so like in our situation, I can't tow my trailer because my truck doesn't tow a fifth wheel. But we want to go. You know,
We just don't know where to go.
Right, and go to the what? How am I going to take the trailer? Well, then go to a safe parking place. Well,
Open up one.
really? You mean
Safe
the one
Open
in
up
Oregon
10.
doesn't exist anymore, or now the one in
Now
San Jose,
Walmart
or-
don't have no safe parking.
And then, so other than that, they say, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, let me go put your tin on your
Yeah,
front
it's
lawn.
not my problem.
No,
Yeah.
what they tell us is contact the Compassion Center and they will tell you where you can go.
Yeah.
The Compassion
You know
Center.
what?
We-
The Compassion Center
We
has
have
been
tried.
failing.
We have tried to contact Tim. I think that is it.
Yeah.
And we asked the girls who don't come anymore.
Right. Yes.
Asked them, well, can we get his number so we can talk to him about some issues? No, you deal with us or you don't deal with us at all.
Wow.
Including
I deal with
He
him.
will not give you Tim's number.
I'll give
Period.
you that number.
That and we would be better suited if we had mental, if we had case,
Yeah, we had to do a mental.
health thing. If we had to have problems with mental illness,
Right.
then we're going to stand a better chance of getting housing.
Wow.
Well, and the
They
reason
said that on the low. They used the term low.
Yeah, and you know, I think I had. So I want to.
Wow.
TJ.
I'll get you that.
Yeah, and I agree. All right. Now, most people here, I'm the only one who is clean and sober. They deny me housing because I've got time in the program. I've got 42 years. And that's stupid. Uh-huh.
So I want to be transparent about something so that everybody knows. I am the most new board member of the Compassion Center. This does not mean, what? How dare you talk about the Compassion Center? This means I want to absolutely hear how the Compassion Center is not meeting your needs.
Okay.
Okay, because they are the local service provider. That's why I chose to be on their board.
Right.
It was looking as though they were working on an agenda that was parallel to the city's. Because
That's what they get the
they're
funding.
supporting
Cahoots.
the moving you out. They gave us a gas card to move us out. They said, we can only give you one, and this is in the effort for you to leave.
You know, boss, they're all together.
So right, well, I mean, if it's like
Well,
compassion,
hold
isn't
on,
that
hold
like
on, sir.
unlimited on a phone
I'm
plan?
from-
Since we didn't have a way of moving our people,
I don't play with them
we
at
weren't
all.
able to
I can't.
move. And then
I can't play with them
they
at all.
came and asked us if we
But
needed
I'm here to learn
we said,
something
well,
new.
could you
You
guys
need gas.
$5 gas?
Find somebody to
We
do
gave
it.
you once, you're not allowed to have it again.
So let me. Oh, I'm sorry, TJ.
No,
After you.
and I don't know if you guys are, but I happen to be. I've got a problem with Compassion Center because this woman does not call me back. She does. I call her, leave her a message, and ask her to update my
Are you
SPDAT.
on her favorite list?
No.
Yeah.
Are you on her favorite list?
She doesn't call back,
Sounds exclusive.
and I chewed her out right in front of Tim Davis.
Wow.
She said it herself. If you're not on my favorite list, most likely you will not get a call back.
Do you know why? Because I am white.
Well,
No.
that's part of it.
That could be
That
part
is
of it,
part
but I
of
don't
it.
think that's a full-blown reason, because you're not young. You're not, praising her and putting her up on a pedestal. That could be, and you're a female, not a male. Because her favorite list consists of nothing but male. Believe me.
People in professional positions are.
There's favoritism at St. Joseph's too.
How do these people fly past like radar? I mean,
We-
that's segregated.
And they
That's
have a
like,
kid,
oh
too.
god.
We called the Compassion Center and asked to speak with Tim or to leave some message on his voicemail. Well, what is this concerning? And we briefly told him this. Well, he doesn't have time for this. He has other issues that he's dealing with right now.
How old's your
And it's
daughter?
like,
How old's
where's
your
the compassion in that? Why aren't we
Where
able
is
to
she?
talk to this
32.
person? My daughter is 32
That was
years
a
old.
title
okay,
for them to make
yeah.
money off the homeless.
Maybe I should introduce myself. I'm Sam Brown. I'm the one they call Pit Stop.
Yeah, he's pissed.
I'm the one that helped create Pit Stop. Along, I'm Jan's right hand man.
Yeah.
Jan's my left hand up first.
Where is Jan?
She was here. She
She
dropped off.
was
the-
here. She dropped off the food bucket, but she has other priorities
Yeah,
that
she
she has
has to
to attend
deliver
to. So that's why I'm a big part of this now. She asked me to step in and kind of and keep her informed in the loop.
Right.
But the reason why I'm the one that came up the Compassion Center's team and created our own, because, and it took many board members with me because of the situations on
Yeah, a lot of
hand.
people
I got
like
jumped
that.
dirty.
Center when they first started.
It was all right when they fired me, but when they fired my fiance for no apparent reason, that's when I took it personal. And so by taking it personal, I gave everybody everything that they needed, not what they wanted. We started Pit Stop. Plus my mom passed away, so I needed something to keep me motivated to get back. I'm the one that Tim constantly bumped heads with, because now he's starting to listen, but now he figured out where his position is. And Angelina's his
Yep.
secondary puppet, that she's trying to create her own system to make it work, but she's using favoritism and her being from the block back then to alter the way the system should play.
Now, I'm sorry, the Compassion Center came to the Garlic Farm and they helped these people who do not live here, who do not want to live here, and were broken down in their car. They gave them $400 to fix their car and gas money to go.
Yeah,
To
but
go.
what did
And
they
we asked them
give
for
up?
a
What did they
$5
give
voucher
up?
for gas and they said that they
Huh?
don't have the
No,
funds.
they did.
Now,
and
I'm sorry.
I was the one.
That's being.
I agree with her. Because when the very start of that compassion center, they were shiesty.
Oh,
Right at the
very,
beginning.
very.
I went 5 times and I haven't been back since
Yeah,
the
we
day
called
they
them out
started.
compassion centers.
They're just crooked.
We're sitting over there without any gas. I have to walk home and leave my car, which is my only possession right now besides my trailer. I have to leave that with a window broken out. It's not going to be safe here. It's not.
You don't
I
have
have
any
to,
gas?
which means I'm going to either sleep in my car tonight, leaving my daughter by herself in a place I don't even trust without him being with me. And it's like, this is ridiculous. It's so stupid. Would you ask for $5 out for people who are supposed to have compassion, and they look at you and say, "Well, we don't have that compassion for you." It's like, well, what do I do to have that compassion? No, I have to go to a place and tell them that I have a mental problem in order to be able to get some compassion. And it's not right. I shouldn't have to have a medical problem in order to get assistance from a compassion center. Thank you. Thank you guys very much. It's so stupid about how people are being treated. And I'm sorry, it is because of your skin color. Because there are people at the garlic farm that are Hispanic. I'm not racist. I love my Hispanic friends. But they have gotten more services from the Compassion Center and from other services than we will ask for. And it's like, no, we don't have any right now for you. It's like, why? Do I need to go get more tanned or something? I stand on a street corner begging for money because we can't survive. Because the food stamps don't go through and all this other stuff. And we're getting harassed by the police. And they will come into the garlic farm and they will park right in front of my truck. Not beside it. Yeah. Right in front of my truck to where I can't leave. But yet they're so intimidating that I can't even move my truck because they're in front of it.
Okay. Well, we're going to all here try to work together to solve these problems, okay? So I understand that you're in a difficult place. We all understand that you're in a difficult place. We're trying to help you. And this effort that we're doing here is not going to just help you, it's going to help everyone, all right? So we just need people to, like, pull together, right? And let's help each other.
I mean, yes, the Compassion Center is not up to par. I don't even like the Compassion Center, but yet I work with them, hoping for a better day, in a better situation. And Pit Stop, we started off with no funding from anybody except for our private supporters. But that's why today we're able to reach out and assist. And I don't agree with half the things that the Compassion Center, the individuals that go out to the field from the Compassion Center do. But I will say this much, I do respect the fact that one by one, we're trying to make, they're trying to work with us and we're trying to work with them. As another provider, I'll go to it because I bet you this much, everybody in that office on First Street will not do what just happened right now. For example, this individual right here, she was injured, had physical injuries, and she was a delivery driver for us. And when she got hurt, we reached out to the police, to her and her significant other, and assisted them in every means way how. We sent them to the Compassion Center. They said, "Oh, we can't help you." They couldn't even update their.
It was police contact that they wanted.
Yeah.
They had none of my injuries when I had my surgery to have my insides out or whatever. None of that went towards it. The slice on my head didn't go towards it. Nothing went towards it. Just police contact.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gave points to my
whether
I was going to get housing or not.
Yeah, and you know the VI SPDAT is a reflection of a country trying not to invest in its people and trying to limit who gets served because there isn't enough pie that they are funding. There is absolutely enough pie, but they are choosing not to provide it to people, and so they use this tool to limit people based on who they've decided is most vulnerable based on their own index of vulnerability. And that's why they would say things like, well, on the low, if you had XYZ condition, then you'd be higher in the line. It's because of this false tool. Now, I do not want to excuse anything that you guys are saying. The type of uncompassionate treatment and failing to call back and making people feel like they're corrupt, that has to change. I will not stay involved with an organization like that, but I want to be really clear. I am on the board. I joined in November.
Well, that's good.
Is that going to make folks feel uncomfortable with me being here?
No.
Well, it depends. If you hop in their back pocket, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't get any money from them.
No, I mean, and which is 100% understandable. I mean, like I was saying, I try not to work, but if you can make that change, then that's where it's a heavy load to put on your shoulders. That's why we kind of started pissed up, and I took the important.
But you can't make a change unless you, like being on the board, you can express your opinion of what's been going on and what you've been told and what you're hearing. You
and
can
that's
express
change right
if they
there.
want if they want to put something and act in the compassion center. You can say, well, this is what I've been told and this is what I've been seeing. This is not going to work.
Sure.
And it's your opinion of things that you're hearing and seeing that's going to count. So no, it's not going to.
As long as we're being transparent, I also want to say that I sit on the dais with the water board on their encampment committee.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever they're deciding certain things, I'm part of that. I have a voice. So I may not be able to shift everything, but I can also bring up things. If you go to the water district and you want to speak before them, you're given a certain amount of time, just like you do when you go speak at the city council.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm on the dais, I can talk for as long as I want. Okay. So that's an advantage that we have to be able to support everyone else. Okay. So it's not like I'm selling out. It's because I'm there representing.
Yeah, right. That's
Okay.
what we need. That's what we need. More people in organizations. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why this is so important.
Right. First-hand information, it comes from somebody that knows all about it. You can't deny the fact that they know.
That's right.
You come with credibility, That's
Appreciate
that's
that.
everything.
All of you.
We can speak 25-cent words all day long, but it's not going to make a hell of a difference if you don't have the experience and everything to bring to the table. And I didn't know that you even existed.
Well, when she was talking at the council, I said, who's this?
Yeah.
How many of you heard of the jungle? In San Jose?
San Jose?
Yeah.
I lived in the jungle. I was there up until the day that they closed it. Okay. And because I had that experience, when I go and I speak at city council in San Jose, they know who I am. Okay. So there's a respect there because they know that I'm not just up there flapping my lips and just making noise. I bring actual points. And if any of you were at the city council meeting at Gilroy, you heard us talking facts.
Yeah.
That's what got us going over there.
Yeah.
We were discussing real statistics, real situations, okay? Because we have that experience.
Exactly.
So that's going to help you guys as well. I don't live in Gilroy, okay? But I'm willing to come here and help you guys get things going. He doesn't live in Gilroy, okay? Wes lives in Salinas. And he comes from Salinas just to be here.
But Wes has been a strong, and he's paved the way, as well as yourself.
Hey.
He's been here, he's been in the mix with us on several occasions.
Okay, and there's the California Homeless Union. Okay,
Yeah.
we're bringing that here. We want to make that grow because we can draw from the strength of other
And it's
unions.
a positive emotion and not just a bunch of
The numbers.
chaos.
Yeah.
Right.
Positive affirmation.
And you read on that shirt how many other areas here in California. That's just California alone. That doesn't count the rest of the country. We have a national union.
I'm on that union, but just you guys should make sure to pick it up for me.
All right, I'll get you. I'll get you.
My bad. But I had signed up when you guys were at the taking over with the John Tompkins court.
I was there.
Exactly. We were both there, and that's when me and my lady signed on
Yeah.
as a strong supporter, and like I mean we still say all day, it's for the people, and
Okay.
I mean, and I'm here to try to speak on the behalf of the people, but at the same time give you guys the strength and what you guys need and support to make let's make some changes because what's going on today, it's looking ugly out there. What's coming for the future, it's looking even worse.
Well, then, how do people feel about the survey? Do you feel like it was complete? Was it missing stuff?
Yes.
Or is it ready to ship and send out to people for answers?
Yes.
You
That's my
can.
opinion.
So I've got pens and extra surveys here. We can do more.
And I have voter registration. Take as many as you want.
Yeah, and letting people know, you know, as they're doing the survey, that if they fill out, I have more pens.
All right, so now you folks are gonna have to be our salespeople.
Right.
You gotta bark
You know,
it. You gotta sell it. You gotta pitch it.
You're gonna know.
Yeah.
The only thing we need to do is worry about our
They
environment,
fill it out.
be the polar opposite of what they expect to find.